All right. Are you ready?
Okay.
You ready? All right. You know when you started.
Go.
All right. Question number 1. How did the '60s impact your life?
How did the 60s affect my life?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 1968 riot broke out on my birthday, 10th birthday. So that was a big deal, and our house caught on fire. So we were part of the riot. The 60s were a time where, the guys would stand on the corner and do the, bebop, the Temptations. And, also significant about the 60s, they had in Detroit what they call stress. Stress were the big four, where the cops would ride 4 deep in a car. And so guys like you walking down the street would get pulled over by stress. Mainly they were white males.
Okay.
And so it was a time where, although we were happy and you never heard about kids being killed, or the only time you would hear about a child being killed would be like they got hit by a car. So it was community, everybody was family. I could go 4 blocks over, and people all on the blocks knew, they knew your family. It was a good time in that sense, but it was a bad time. It was a lot of racial tension, and that spurred the civil rights movement.
Okay. Do you mind? Can I ask you? Why did the riot break?
The riot broke out because of civil unrest.
Mm-hmm.
They were tired of, white police officers killing our black men. They were tired of the segregation, white only, black only, colored only. They called us colored. So people were tired of segregation and separatism. So, tensions just kind of rose until it became, we're not taking it anymore. So they started firebombing stores, and, the city burned, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I'm
why.
sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
But question number 2. Do you think the '60s was a good era for you?
I enjoyed it, yeah. Like I said, it was a time where it was community. We had Motown. I was a little girl, I would go down to Motown Review and see Stevie Wonder and the Temptations and Gladys Knight and, the Miracles and Smokey Robinson. And it was a great time. Again, it was a time where you could walk the streets peacefully and didn't have to worry about anybody bothering you. For me, being a female, it was safer than maybe for a black male because of the, they call it stress or the police. But other than that, it was a great time.
Okay. What do you think one of the failures of the civil rights movement was?
I think it took us back. In the 60s, blacks owned a lot of their own businesses. Once the riot came, that movement changed. All of our buildings were burned. We lost a lot of stores and, cleaners and things that we owned as a black community never got rebuilt by blacks. When they started rebuilding, whites and other races started coming in and buying up our properties and building their stores and supermarkets, and so it kind of took us back, and we never got back. We've never gotten back to where we were.
Okay. Question number 4. How does the present day differ from the '60s?
I think today is more undercover. Still that racism. They do it undercover. It's not
Right.
as overt or open as it was in the 60s. In the 60s, black males didn't really look at white males. They would hold their heads down and say, "Hi, sir. Yes, sir." Today, you can look at a white male in the eye and say, "Hi, my name is Isaiah."
Right.
And they'll tell you they don't like you. Back then they would tell you, "Boy, I don't like you."
Right.
Today, a white man will shake your hand, but he'll stab you in the back or
Same
set you
time.
up.
Right.
So it's a little different today because it's undercover. But the separateness is still there. Racism it still exists.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
all the way to the top. Look at our, administration, the president.
Yeah.
You know, it's still here.
You're right. You're right. Okay. Number 5. In your opinion, why do you think the Civil Rights Act was so important?
The Civil Rights Act was important because we needed something to justify our existence. You know, they didn't feel that we were a black person was 100% human. You know, you're 3/4 of a man. You don't have rights to vote. You don't have right, to drink water out of a water fountain. You got to have a colored water fountain or a white water fountain. But with the Civil Rights Act, it brought us up to what they call equality. So it's illegal, even though it still happens today. It's not legal, and you have grounds to fight it if you're discriminated against.
Okay. I'm liking these answers. Okay. Number 6. What are your thoughts on nonviolence?
I don't think that violence is the way to solve problems or issues. That's why I'm a social worker, because I try to bring people together or help people to gain insight about a problem or issue and discover alternate ways to solve the problem. Violence is not the way. It only ends with bad consequences for the victim or the perpetrator. So I think that a nonviolent approach can get you just as far as or further than a violent approach.
Yeah.
If you don't like somebody, you go out there and bust their windows out their car, that's not helping you solve a problem, and it's costing them, money to get their car repaired. But if you don't like a person and you go to them and say, you know what, I say I have a problem with you. I don't like it when you do blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Maybe we could talk about it and, I could try to get an understanding as to why that you do that way. It might help me, and maybe you get an understanding that maybe I shouldn't do it that way. Maybe I should kind of tweak what I do, and then we can come to an agreement and move on, not violently.
Ooh, not violently. You got that? Hey, but that's why I always say, I'm not getting off topic a little bit, but that's why I came up with a slogan: anger is not the way.
I like it.
Yeah.
Anger is not the way.
Okay. Well, off that, question number 7. What do you think of Black Lives Matter and similar movements today?
I think Black Lives Matter was necessary. It's a necessary movement. I think that, again, it gives, the people that's being affected, it gives them a forum to speak their mind and to let the broader community know this is happening to us. It also gives them an audience. It gives them an audience. People say, oh, I never knew it was, thinking it was like that. Because I know Caucasian people in my community where I live, they're nice and they're like, oh, hi, I love your lawn, I love your flowers. But they don't know anything about me.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so when they hear something about Black Lives Matter, they come outside and say, that colored man in Missouri, I didn't know that was happening there. So it gives them an opportunity. It gives them an opportunity to see, what we're facing. I think Black Lives Matter. It matters. I think that philosophy is a good philosophy. And other movements, what's his name? Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick. Yes, ma'am. Still for what he believes.
Down. I think those are common. I think that, he has a voice in his rap and, in his shows. I think there's, it's a time for all things, and I think this is a good time for them to be expressive. I think if I, who knows, I still might do it. I might go out there and start a movement myself.
Well, ain't nothing wrong with that. Okay. Question number 8. This is going to be a good one for you. You got to really think about this one. Okay. Do you think that the promise of inequality has been fulfilled? If so, how?
I think to a certain degree. Okay. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's probably in this country and probably many other countries, it's probably going to always be that way. Even back in, Africa and other underdeveloped countries and developed countries, there's always been a caste system. whether it's social, racial, financial, economically, it's always levels. And so the promise of equality probably will never be. That's probably something that will only happen in the next life, because, there's a God who says, we are all created equally.
Right.
But as long as people have more money than you, or, are prettier than you, or your skin is lighter than mine, or, I come from a family that, has owned, billions of dollars intergenerationally, I think there's always going to be inequality, whether we have equal rights bills or whatever. I think that's always going to exist.
Okay, that's understandable. Question number 9. What are your thoughts on the death of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.?
I think they were predicated or planned. I don't think they happened accidentally, and I think both of their murders were setups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I got a follow-up question.
Sure.
Do you think it was a black man to murder both of them, or do you think it was a white man?
Well, I think that it was orchestrated by a white male.
Okay.
A white man. Whether the shooters were black or white, it could have been black, it could have been white, but I think the mastermind behind the assassinations were, white males.
Okay. And the final question. What year were you born in? And how did that time make you feel?
Well, I was born in 1958, which
Okay.
makes me 60 years old. I was born in the South. When my father was in the Army, and my mother was pregnant, so when she went into labor, they lived on the Army base, and the Army doctors couldn't deliver a child, so they IVAC'd her or helicoptered her to the nearest relative, which was my father's mother in Arkansas.
Okay.
So my mother had me in Arkansas, in the deep South, in 1958, in a hospital that delivered me, but because my mother needed a blood transfusion, she has rare blood, and she needed a blood transfusion. She almost died because they said they didn't have any colored blood, and they would not give her. So I came here, fighting to get here, and hearing that story all my life just made me kind of feel like, there's a purpose of my being, but I'm fighting for my people, because, my mother could have died because she was black. What happened was, when the Army heard about what was going on, my father's comrades in the Army came and rolled their sleeves up and started donating blood, and they were black and white and everybody. They were just coming to save their life.
Okay.
But yeah, I was raised in my first 6 years of life in the South. I was raised in the prejudiced South. My grandmother would have to drive her truck to the back of the store and park, because only whites could park in the front of the store. Blacks had to park in the back. When we went to the stores, there was signs that said colored bathrooms and white bathrooms.
Right.
There were signs that said colored water fountains, white water fountains. So that's kind of how I grew up until we moved to Detroit. And things were a little better undercover, but it still was racism.
Okay, well, a follow-up question based off what you said about your mother. Okay, so now that you think about it, how does it make you feel that you saw or you heard that a white male was rolling his sleeves up to save your mother's life?
It made me feel that they are good people. We can't really judge people by the color of their skin, by their age, by, like I said, their economic status. I think you have to look at a person for who they are. Look that person in the eye. You get a feeling. When you talk to someone, you get a feeling for, or a passion or feeling for their demeanor. I feel like you're a good guy. I feel like he's a good guy. I can trust you. There's someone that can come in here and I get a vibe, and I'm like, I'm not leaving that person in my office, because I know if I leave, I'm gonna lose my phone. You know what I'm saying? You get a vibe, and you guys have that too.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's black or white, or yellow or red, or Arab or Chinese, or I
Right.
think it's you have to judge a person for who they are, individually.
Okay, that's understandable. Thank you for your time as well.
You're welcome. Good luck on your report.
Thank you.
You did a good job.